Good morning, ladies and gents. I hope you had a super weekend. Our conversation today on Living with Us is around homeschooling. Now, if you have children, there comes a point where you have to stop and think, where am I going to take my kids to school? How do I want their education to look like and to be like? And that's why we're having the conversation today, because more and more homeschooling is becoming a viable option and people are interested and curious to learn more about it, assuming you aren't already homeschooling your kids. And in studio today, we have two guests, the right people to be asking these questions because they've been educating their children in homeschooling for 20 years and 12 years. At first, we have Liz Gitonga. Liz and her husband, Patrice, have been educating their kids at home for over 20 years, making them one of the pioneer Kenyan homeschooling families in the country. What began as a short-term let's homeschool as we wait idea has become a life commitment and passion. Liz serves in the steering committee of the East Africa Community of Homeschoolers, that's EACH, an organization that supports homeschool families in the region. She also holds a bachelor's degree in education and a master's degree in education psychology. So yeah, that gives you a bit of an advantage, right? I imagine.
Yes and no.
Yes and no, okay. And then we also have Canute Waswa, and Canute is a homeschooling father of 3. And despite studying economics in university, his early career followed a passion for nature through the Presidential Awards scheme. He progressed from there to work for Outward Bound in Kenya, Bermuda, and Canada. And Waswa is passionate about education and has been homeschooling, again, for 12 years to your 3 children.
Yes.
Welcome, welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have so many questions for you.
Yeah.
But first, maybe we could start by hearing you share how you begun this journey. Maybe Liz, you could take us. How did you decide, you know what, I'm going to homeschool my kids?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I get asked that a lot.
Yeah.
And I realized that I probably never decided
Okay.
at one point.
Yeah.
And as you said, you know, it was, we thought, let's do this for the time being.
Yeah.
And, you know, as you pointed out, I'm a trained teacher. And so I knew that school happens in a classroom with 20 kids in front of you, and the teacher stands there and talks to the children and teaches them. And the parents have nothing to do with that, not in the classroom.
Yeah.
And when our daughter was 3 years old, and like any parent, we began looking for schools, where could she go? And we kind of felt, man, these schools are demanding too much. They want my 3-year-old to be in school the whole day. You know, there were just things we felt did not resonate well with what we had envisioned for our children.
Okay.
We had wanted to spend a lot of time with them. And we realized, well, our time is being taken away already. We're going to have very little time with our daughter. And so we thought, well, there are some schools that are a little more friendly and we could enroll in those ones, only that they were very far away from where we lived.
Okay.
So some friends came and said, and they were American friends, and they said, hey, would you consider homeschooling?
Yeah.
And I thought that's the worst idea in the world.
Why? Why did you think it's the worst?
Because I thought that's not how education happens. I cannot be stuck with my child at home, just me and her. What do we do? Okay, 1 + 1.
Right.
And then I thought, you know, though I'm a trained teacher, I've never taught anybody how to read.
Okay.
They all come to me when they know how to read. So how am I going to jump that? And yeah. And my husband thought this is the best idea ever.
Oh, okay. So he was pro.
He was
homeschooling.
pro.
Okay.
And I said, you know, it's very easy for you to think that, you know, you will go to work.
Yeah.
I will be stuck here with a child. She will turn out all wrong and it will be my fault, you know.
That's so funny, yeah. That must be a real fear for a lot of parents, actually. The idea of like not doing it right. What about you, Waswa? How did you jump in?
We didn't jump in. We more drifted in.
Okay.
When we got married, and then we're expecting our firstborn.
Yeah.
My wife and I discussed, and we were proponents of the fact that when our children are young, my wife would stay home as the principal caregiver.
Okay.
And so that decision, of course, comes as a package. It means we'll have to do on one income. It means our lifestyle would not be equivalent to the lifestyle we desire.
Yeah.
But we said it's a price we're willing to pay so that our children can have values inculcated in them early enough.
Okay.
And so just like Liz, when our daughter, who's our firstborn, was 3 years, and we started having the conversation of school, which school, and why not this other school, and we came to realize that we were actually asking ourselves the wrong question. The right question should be, what do we want to see at the end of our children's education?
Okay.
That defines the path you have to take them through. We had that discussion. The things that we settled on, which are issues about self-esteem, gifts and talents, that education is supposed to nurture your nature, and not every child is academic, and it's okay. Emotional intelligence and soft skills and character, those are important to us, and our conviction and conclusion was the best platform for that was homeschooling.
Wow, and it's interesting that you both started off when your children were 3. That's your first kids. So how was it an easier decision then when your second and third children came into the picture? Which, by the way, I know it might seem confusing because they both have 3 kids and they both are homeschoolers, but no, they have separate families.
Yes.
But so how did you, was it easier when you were making the decision?
For our subsequent kids, it definitely was, because well, our second born came 5 years after. And so we had walked this journey for a while. And began experiencing great success. And realized that actually, you know, when we talked of education at first and looked for schools, we're thinking about the place to go and do the reading, writing, arithmetic. But we realized, you know, home education is a lot more. It's an encompassing of the whole life. It is living your life with the children, going shopping with them, visiting a sick relative, going to...
Is that constitutes as part of homeschooling?
Definitely, absolutely,
yeah. Oh, okay.
Because then it's a whole, you know, where do you demarcate? We've begun school, we're ending school. You realize that you're actually living life together. And so, true, we will sit down and do our mathematics and other kind of academic teaching. But we're living life together. So after I'm done with teaching you all that, then what? Do I just leave you at a corner? No, we go shopping together, we go visiting together, and you realize that this actually becomes the core input in the child. Because they are learning to live life. You're modeling life before them. And they're learning to live life and interact.
Then do you have a specific curriculum that you have to abide by?
My wife and I, we are what we call eclectic homeschoolers. And so we pick a bit from all over and we design our own curriculum, and that works for our children.
And what about you? I didn't even know that there were different versions of
how you practice
homeschooling.
And I think it's important to keep in perspective what you are saying, that we're looking at the end goal. Where do we want this child to be? And therefore that determines what is the package. How are we living life with this child? What are we inputting in this child? Because you, as a parent, you're able to recognize these are their gifts, these are their talents, these are their strengths, their weaknesses. How do I build on their strengths? How do I bring up their weaknesses to make them strong? How do I capitalize on their giftings and, you know, really channel that to a life course? So, like we are also quite eclectic. A lot of families, though, will take a boxed curriculum and say, you know, like I'm doing the British curriculum, and they'll do that from start to finish, or some will use these hordes of curriculum, especially from the US. So what our approach has been is understanding who this child is and crafting a curriculum that suits who they are. Now I am a strong proponent for reading, because I feel like he does, you know, that's very, very important. So even on a bad school day, my kids know you must do your math and we must read a book. You know,
math and books.
That has been like our very core, you know, core. But you know, building around that. Like one of our daughters really enjoys baking and culinary arts. That's part of her curriculum. She will make a meal for the family. She will try out a different recipe. And we don't consider that to be time spent out of school.
Yeah.
We consider that to be all part of our education.
Right, and I love that you hone in on their passions and skills, and from a young age you can start to mold that and allow for them to flourish, because you never know, they could be the next great big baker in the world, because you allowed them to tap into that at a young age.
That's right.
And now I want to understand what happens when you, as the parent, are not really a fan of a specific subject, because you were talking about you are an educator.
That's right.
But you'd never really taught anyone how to read and write. They came to you having done that.
Yes.
So what happens when it's something that's new? Because I can't imagine teaching my child chemistry, because I can't for the life of me. I can't tell you anything about it. I mean, I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
So did that ever impact your ability to hone in or to try and support your children if they were passionate about such a subject that you weren't really
strong in?
Yeah.
Let me talk about my experience, especially in the high school years, and you can share what has happened in your family. Because in the high school years, I have 2 children now who have proceeded high school. One has then now proceeded to university.
Okay.
And they were interested in subjects I was not.
Okay. That is?
Like my son wanted to study physics.
Okay. Great.
I
Where do you
just don't have
start?
that in me, right?
Yeah.
But there are excellent resource people around. And what we did in that case is call in a tutor who understood our family philosophy and what we are aiming for this child, and has worked with him, teaching him physics. The same too. And the danger with homeschooling sometimes, and I guess this happens in parenting, is that I can't think that my weaknesses are my child's weaknesses.
Right.
So I'm not good in chemistry, so chemistry is hard. So it will be okay if you just did very minimal chemistry.
Yeah.
And yet that could be the very passion of the child.
Right.
So even opening those doors to allow the child to express themselves and try out the things even that I don't like.
Yeah.
Because I was surprised at how well my son took on to physics.
Okay.
And computer science programming, which I thought, absolutely not. Let's just learn Microsoft Word and the comfortable things.
Yeah.
And he said, no, I really want to do this. And so we got somebody to teach him.
Oh, so they come in.
They come
into your space.
That's right.
What about you, Waswa? How did you go about that?
I mean, from experience, as you explained earlier,
your
role as a parent in homeschooling is to identify the gifting and the talent that the child has, and then help them in that direction. Okay. For example, I'm an avid outdoors guy. I mean, I like mountain climbing and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, presidential awards, you were saying.
Exactly,
the
I'm a gold award holder.
Yeah.
My wife cannot sleep in a tent if her life depended on it, okay?
Okay.
But now what have I done? I have taken my children and other children who are homeschooled, and every month we go out for a day hike and a camp. Now, what does camping do? Once your child learns how to set up camp, there is logistics management, okay? There is planning. Because if you don't remember to carry rice, you'll sleep hungry.
That's
okay?
true.
That's a life skill.
You learn to fend for yourself.
Exactly.
Out there,
You learn to interact with nature. Hiking is hard. Okay, and so they learn to stretch themselves. So what I have done is I have brought in my strength into the homeschool. My wife is very musical.
I'm still so curious, aren't there specific hours? Do you wake up and you're like, okay, by 8 a.m. you need to have done this and finished, getting dressed because we need to start math? Isn't there any kind of structure in that sense?
Yes, I'm sure if you had this answer from my wife, you'd hear something very different. Okay? But what I would say is we set goals. We set goals for the week. We set goals for the month, which are now broken down into the day. And then you are able to do things in bite-sized chunks. And so that's how you structure your homeschool.
Okay, we have to take a quick break, but even before that, I just want to share with you guys a quick feature of celebrities who've been homeschooled. So take a look. Hilary Duff, an American actress, singer, songwriter, businesswoman, and author. Duff began her acting career at a young age and was homeschooled from the age of 8. Venus and Serena Williams both were homeschooled from elementary through high school by their dad so that they could have more time to work on their tennis career. Today, Justin Timberlake is a superstar with multiple best-selling albums, 6 Grammy Awards, 4 Emmys, and roles in movies and on TV. He got his start as a child on Star Search and as a cast member on the Mickey Mouse Club before joining 90s boy band NSYNC. Though he attended elementary school in Memphis, Tennessee, it's been widely reported that he was homeschooled throughout high school due to the demands of his career with NSYNC. Actor Ryan Gosling got into trouble as a child as a result of being bullied by other students. He struggled in school and by age 10 still couldn't read. Because of these difficulties, his mother, a single parent, pulled him out to homeschool him. Jamie Louise Anderson is an American professional snowboarder who was homeschooled along with her 7 brothers and sisters while growing up in South Lake Tahoe. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we have been trying to disseminate homeschooling and understand it. And we've got 2 guests on show today, Waswa and Liz, who've been homeschooling their children for 12 years and 20 years respectively. And before we dive back into the conversation, I just want to share a quick fact with you. And that is the modern homeschool movement began in the 1970s with John Holt, an American author and educator. He argued that formal schools focus on rote learning and created an oppressive classroom environment designed to make children compliant employees. What do you guys think about that?
Rote learning is basically about what I get, I give back to you.
Okay.
Now, starting with rote learning is okay, but as a human being grows, you're supposed to develop critical thinking skills.
Right.
Okay? How do I get solutions that are relevant to my context?
Yeah.
In my village in Adungosi in Teso.
Right.
That is education.
Right.
Not just an engineering degree. Okay?
I hear you.
How do I build a durable house out of mud for my grandmother and it is safe enough for her to live for the next 50 years?
Yeah.
That is education. And so what Holt really sought to do was ask, is this relevant? Is this education contextually relevant for us? And if not, what then must we do?
Right, okay.
And so you start exploring
Yeah.
other options like homeschooling.
Okay. Now I want to understand the aspect of socialization. You know, your children spend a good chunk of time in the house with you, I imagine. Although I do hear that you do have moments where you take them out, whether it's camping, whether you go shopping with them. But how do you make sure that they also are interacting with children their own age and learning? Because that's a lot of learning takes place in those interactions. When you realize someone tougher than you, smarter than you, how do you then navigate that?
And I think as we look at the question of socialization, it's looking at it in the perspective of how is society laid out,
Okay.
minus the artificial settings.
Yeah.
You hardly will come across when you have your family gathering or you're getting together with your colleagues at work.
Okay.
You probably will not be all 30-year-olds. And you won't have all your
True.
children 3-year-olds.
Yeah.
You know, there is such diversity.
Yeah.
There are people who are older than you,
True.
younger
Some of
than
my
you.
best friends are 10 years older than me.
Now look
Yeah.
at that,
Yeah.
yes. And I think homeschooling allows for that kind of diverse, realistic socialization so that we're not putting all 3-year-olds together
Right.
to kind of, interact just 3-year-olds.
Yeah.
My 3-year-old daughter, now my 13-year-old daughter is
Yeah.
with her 16-year-old brother and her 21-year-old sister. And when we get together with Waswa's family, he has his 12-year-old daughter and you have 10 and 8.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So-
And so it's really diverse.
Yeah.
It is very natural.
Yeah.
The relationships are real.
Yeah.
That they will refer to Uncle Waswa as part of their community.
Right. Are there any kinds of kind of regulation around homeschooling? Maybe expectations, whether it's even with the East African community of homeschoolers. Is that it?
Yes,
Each?
yes.
Yeah, or the government, so that there's an expectation at the end of it of what's expected to come out of it, whether it's a certain grade or certain skill sets.
Okay, on regulation, there are 3 things I'll mention.
Okay.
Number 1, the Constitution gives every child a right to education. okay? And then the Constitution goes ahead to define what schooling is,
okay?
Just like M-Pesa came in before there was regulation to make it illegal or legal for that matter. So that is where homeschooling comes in. So that it is a child's fundamental right, and the Constitution also gives the parents the obligation and responsibility to determine the education of their children. Now, the good thing about this country is for you to get into university or any college, all you need to do is to pass KCSE or IGCSE. And so what we have done, and which is what her daughter did, is she was homeschooled, and when they felt, and she felt, because it's a conversation with her, they felt it's time for her to go to college, they prepared her to sit university entrance exams. And she did that, and she's now in college. So I think,
I hear you. So and when she was sitting those exams, did she do that at home, or does she have
did it
to?
at home. She got all her lessons at home. For exam preparation. Then registered as a private student. Candidate, and sat the exams.
And what is that setup like? Because if I remember some of the exams I've done in the past, it's been like, ooh, tense, and there's someone watching you, and you're just like dying.
It definitely is a new experience. That's right, because that's not what she's used to. You know? But there's also the growth and maturity that comes with, just by the time she's 16, 17, 18, can fully comprehend that I am getting ready for an exam. And I'll be on task. I will prepare myself adequately. And even when you get to that exam room and you're all in these columns and there's an invigilator around, you just, keep focused on the task. Some of the things were shockers, of course, like, gosh, mom, people were trying to cheat. Because those are not things she has experienced.
But were there other people with her as she was taking the exam?
Yes. There's a large number of students that sit in as private candidates for one reason or the other. Some are homeschooled. Some, I realize, these little private schools that may not have licenses to carry out exams because they don't have the facilities, register their students as private candidates. So you're in a hall with lots of other students too. And did your children have to sit? Oh no, they're 12. They're quite young yet.
They have never sat any exams in their life. They sit life exams. So when we go camping or we go hiking, or even when we are making stew at home. And you teach them that when you're making meat stew, you put in the meat before the potatoes, because potatoes take shorter to cook. And if we don't do that, then the stew is bad. So that's the exam.
But then do you grade them? How do you establish growth? How do you clearly determine that this is where you were last year and this is where you are today? Is there a test or something that you can...
Interestingly, and it goes back to a previous question about curriculum, 844 is a very good curriculum. When you look at the structure and the form and the scope and sequence of 844, it was very good. We failed because parents stopped becoming involved directly in facilitating this curriculum. So for my children, for their math, we actually do 844. And they breeze through it. In fact, they like it. Yes.
Can you share ways in which you've seen your children grow through this journey? Maybe Liz, you could go first.
Well, I have 3 to think about. But I've seen them grow in their confidence, self-confidence. I think also not being in that situation where you're always competing against others, and especially if you're not doing well, then your self-esteem goes down, because everything they do, they're number one. You're number one in your class. It's you. And I mean, in other words, I'll work with my student, my son or my daughter, till they're excellent in that particular aspect that we're working on. So it's not about it's time up, the bell has gone, or hey, we have this whole course of study to complete, so too bad we are moving on to the next. We have to do it till it is well mastered. So that way then I've seen that their confidence has grown. I also, we're going to touch on you, Waswa, in a minute, but I want to ask, how has a transition been for your daughter? Because
if you're sharing how, you know, you've been able to work with her and make sure that she excels to the point where she feels very confident in whatever subjects or whatever topic you're learning on that day. But now that she's interacting with other students and having a gauge of where she is in relation to these other students, has it affected anything? And maybe her self-confidence, or is she just like, eh?
Thankfully, it hasn't.
Yeah.
It has not at all affected her self-confidence, because, you know, she was well prepared and went into the course that she really wanted to pursue, and is very passionate about that. And so she does, you know, expend herself and really put in all it takes, and does well.
Yeah.
Her difficulty in fitting in with college life was actually what I thought was a good difficulty.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there are all sorts of people. You've been to college and we know how social settings are.
Yes.
There are those who will not do their work, and you're in a group work setting and she's thinking, for goodness sake, why did you enroll to university if you did not intend to work, you know? She thinks you only get into something and you work hard at it. So, you know, that had been a discomfort for her and has learned how to navigate
But that's important, because that's how life is. You sometimes get grouped in with people who are just going to be the extra weight, and you have to learn.
And you have to learn how to work with people. So that was an important social skill that she has now learned in there.
Now, what about you, Waswa? What have you noticed in your children?
Yes, I have noticed them grow in initiative and creativity. They learn to be creative, because as homeschoolers, by nature, we learn to be creative, because every moment is a learning moment. I'll give an example. We're going to church 2 Sundays back, and a Mercedes overtakes us. And my son says, Daddy, how come you don't drive a Mercedes? And I tell him, son, you don't park a Mercedes in front of a rented house. And so we ended up talking about...
You better preach, Waswa.
Yes, we ended up talking about personal finance. Now, right there in the car driving to church is a schooling moment. That's how homeschooling works. And so being able to explore such opportunities, we have grown in that. Tenacity of pursuit.
Right.
If my children set their mind to do something, believe you me, they will do it. And so I have seen that grow in them. And for me, this is actually what this continent needs. If we are to unlock the brand of Africa for what it's worth, we need to bring up a generation that has a self-esteem, that they believe in themselves enough to say, we are players on the global stage. And so I have seen that. I've also just seen a lot of reasonable self-denial. As you said, for us to homeschool, it's what in economics we call an opportunity cost. And just accepting that there are many families who would really love to homeschool, but they really cannot afford to do it. Probably because both parents need to work and bring bread to the table. And them just realizing that this is our lot in life, but being gracious enough to see and sympathize with others who have not been able to have a lot such as ours. And that is empathy that we really need for the generation we're bringing up. So I've seen them grow up in those areas.
I have one more question before we jump into an insert. I want to know, I don't know if you've seen those memes where it's time for school and the parents are like, yes, take them, teacher, like I've just had it, this holiday was too long. I want to understand very quickly from you guys, how do you navigate that moment where maybe you're just tired, you've just had enough of your child and you're just like, I'm gonna lose my mind right now if this kid doesn't just give me 1 hour to myself. Have you had those, how do you do it in those moments where you just don't want to deal with anyone?
Now, I don't want to sound like our home is perfect. And
but I guess this is home.
But one of the things that really helps is if you're husband and wife, just really both of you being in that agenda.
I just want to share a quick feature of this person who'd been homeschooled, and this is what they had to share about their journey.
My name is Yokao Mutonga. I am a student of anthropology at the University of Nairobi. I've been there for the past 3 years. And on top of my full-time studies, I work part-time at a research institute called the British Institute in Eastern Africa. It's a postgraduate research institute in the social sciences and humanities that seeks to not only promote research in these areas but support researchers around the world. And I was homeschooled from the age of 11 years old until I was finishing high school around 22 years old. My mom primarily homeschooled us, and dad would take over from her one day a week so she could have an off day. I was homeschooled with the accelerated Christian education. It's become very common here in Kenya, and it's an American system that uses a Christian approach to teaching education. It's Montessori based. For me, my experience in that system was, I like to say it was life-saving, because my personality was the kind that did not do well in a large group, which is the traditional way we do school. And so coming into ACE, that's the short form of this system, a place where I could study, I could take in knowledge in bite-sized chunks and study at my own pace by myself, was the perfect environment for me to learn. For me, it was a very positive experience. And the self-discipline that it grew in me, because ACE is different from other homeschool systems in that you basically study by yourself. So you have a supervisor who supervises, but the student sits by themselves and does their work, sets their own goals, and then checks on those goals the next day. So that self-discipline was something that made me into a more motivated student and person. I have 3 sisters, and for the longest time it was me and my 2 sisters. Then our youngest sister came into the picture many years later, and she's also being homeschooled right now. We'd start in the morning with exercise, and then after that take a quick shower, and whoever was on the rota for breakfast would make it, and then we'd have breakfast as a family and have family devotions. After that, each of us would sit at our own cubicles, because every student is expected to have their own cubicle, and then we would discuss our goals with my mom and say, Mom, these are my goals for the day. We had a goal card where we'd set them, and when Mom says that's okay, you get on with your work, then everyone would start their own schoolwork, and we'd have a morning session from 8 to 10, have one break, and then have a second session, and after that go for lunch break. And then in the afternoon, any work that was remaining would be taken as homework, because now we had extracurricular activities. We did piano, we did swimming, we did tennis, we did sewing, and then sometimes Mom would just let us go to the library and borrow books which we could read for fun. Then we'd come back in the evenings and work on our homework by ourselves. Then when someone is done with their work for the day, you set goals for the next day. What I appreciate about being homeschooled is being given an opportunity to be the best possible version of myself. I feel like just being given the freedom to explore knowledge to its depths in a home setting gave me an opportunity to go really deep into subjects that I would have considered not my type if I was personally in a public school, although the story is different for other people. I picked up many skills from being homeschooled. One of them was writing well. So learning how to write in different genres, whether it's academic writing or just basic journalistic writing. And that has helped me in my schoolwork, that I am able to write good term papers. It has also helped me in a work setting where I work as a part-time clerk. I am able to write reports well. If I was to have children in their formative years, I would want to homeschool them so I can give them a foundation.
And there you have it, straight from the horse's mouth, as they say. That's what they had they had to share about their experience when it comes to homeschooling. We now have to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll be back into grilling and trying to understand the world of homeschooling from both Liz and Waswa. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we've been talking about homeschooling from both Canute Waswa and Liz Gitonga's perspective, who've been homeschooling for a total of 32 years combined. If we look at, the two of them, 12 years and 20 years. And they both have 3 children. I now want to ask, was there ever a moment where your children suggested or said or implied that they no longer want to be homeschooled, that they'd actually want to go into the traditional school setting?
Okay.
Maybe Waswa could start, yeah.
Children being children, that will always happen.
Okay.
I mean, especially in the initial years of homeschooling.
Yeah.
Because they're seeing their neighbors, they have school bags and they have school uniform, and they have a school bus which comes to pick them up every day.
Yeah.
Okay? And so in the initial years, we had a lot of explaining to them that this is the path we have chosen, and just trying to unpacking it for a 5 or a 6-year-old, because that's when they really start asking the questions. But with time, they have come to understand that, and now the children have actually become the biggest proponents of the system which we have chosen for them.
Okay.
And so, to me, that is actually doing life together, okay? Explaining why, as a family, we do the things the way we do them,
right,
and not necessarily because other people are doing them.
Right.
Okay, and that means that even in life, you'll get in situations where you're going to swim against the tide and go against the grain, but because you have defined your philosophy and why you want to do the things the way you want to do them, then you had better do it.
So what happens, though, if maybe 3 years from now your son comes back to you and says, Dad, I've thought about this long and hard, and I think I want to go into the traditional school setting. What then, when he's older and comes to you with enough reason as to why he believes he needs to be in a school setting, would you be open to that?
I mean, as I said, my role as a parent
Yeah.
is to facilitate my child
Yeah.
to get the best platform for education that is good for him.
Yeah.
And so if we discuss, and that is the solution that we end up with,
Yeah.
I will gladly ship him off to
Great.
school.
Okay. What about you, Liz? Did you have those moments where they were like, we want to go to school?
Yeah, we've had those moments, and I think when our firstborn came on to high school, I was also a bit intimidated and wondered, gosh, you know, are we going to be able to do this right? Because now it's high school, it's more serious. And she also expressed the desire to go to school. So we said, okay, you know what? Maybe this is the time for you to move on to school.
Okay.
And what I like about that experience is that it's affirmed what we had been working on all these years, because she went to school.
Yeah. Oh, so she at some point went to school. Okay.
But unfortunately, lasted only 2 weeks.
What? What happened?
Well, what happened, that is where I'm thankful, she knew what to expect when she's going into a place to be taught by somebody.
Yeah.
And, you know, the first day, second day, third day, first week, and she comes and says, Mom, you know, the teacher comes in and we have all these stories that we are telling, and he came in even a little late. And let's see, look at the work I've done.
Yeah.
If this is what I'm coming to school for, you know, I'd rather stay home and sleep.
Okay.
So she was able to be the judge of what she was receiving. I'm not there in the classroom with her.
And she felt that it wasn't up to what
she felt
had
it
been
wasn't
used
up to standard. And she was able to make that call and say, this is not a good use of my time.
Yeah.
Actually, can we think of doing this at home? We could even get tutors and we could work around the high school.
Actually,
thing.
based on that, how did you know what grade to put your daughter in, or what class to put your daughter in?
Well, like then it's high school and we're going into high school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, and pretty much because she already had gone to the level where I knew she's able to handle high school material.
Right.
And, you know, so if we're looking into college and what do you want to study in college, and so what do you need before that?
Right.
And we figured, okay, so let's take these 3 years preparing you to sit that exam, and then you get into college.
Okay.
But, you know, I'll tell you something also.
Yeah.
That what I've learned in taking my daughter through the course, it never takes that long. What we do 4 years in high school to prepare like for the IGCSE exam, you can do it in a year.
No.
I'm telling you the truth.
But is that because you focused in on what you're passionate about? or you know, this you've let go of the
like
other subjects that
that helps.
Okay.
You know, there's no use spending so much time on what you're not good in, especially if it's an option.
Right. Yeah.
Let's draw on your strengths.
Yeah.
And let's focus on that.
Interesting, but it's interesting to hear that you know that you've found a way to minimize or expedite the whole time.
That's right, because in schools a lot of time gets spent in between bells and all these other move from one class to another.
Yeah.
But the course of study is really isn't that long.
Yeah.
You can
and I
do
guess
that
you're
in
also going at the rate of, you know, everyone at the whole group's rate, so not just the individual.
Exactly.
If I was to interject, every curriculum is designed for the slowest person in the cohort. Okay?
Oh.
That means if your child gets these things quick, then within no time they'll be bored.
Yeah, I hear you.
And when they're bored, then the teacher says you're disturbing the others, a noisemaker.
Right.
I'm really bored.
Okay.
So if you can really take them at their optimal speed,
then
it will end up taking 1 year.
It doesn't take that long.
How has the community responded to it, to the society, your group of friends, your family? How did they respond to your decision to homeschool?
Okay, initially, there are questions. You know, questions informed by just lack of understanding initially, to how does this thing work, to I'm not a trained teacher, can I homeschool my children? What does that mean? Okay, but with time, as they interact with us and as they interact with our children, we get to realize that the community and especially families, they ask these questions because in their heart of hearts, they mean well. They are direct stakeholders in the well-being of these children. Okay, and so once they get to demystify the whole thing about education and schooling, the community becomes one of our biggest cheerleaders when it comes to homeschooling.
What about you? What was your experience?
And that's pretty much my experience too. And even like grandparents, for example, they'd never ever heard of homeschooling, so this is strange. But just welcoming them to our home, you know, I remember several times when my mom has come in and stayed with us. And actually, one thing that we did, I've just remembered, was we asked her to teach the children mother tongue, because you know, they were not strong in their mother tongue. And she said, you know, of course grandparents are always upset that, hey, these kids only know English, where's their mother tongue? And we said, okay, sure, why don't you come and do classes with them?
Right.
And it was great fun, and she taught them songs, taught them proverbs and stuff.
Oh, so they get to be a part of this.
So allowing, creating those
it.
spaces where they can be a part of it and understand it, be on the inside rather than observing from the outside and wondering what's happening. That has really helped answer the questions, as he says, are legitimate concerns, but which sometimes, you know, if left unanswered, can even cause friction.
I hear you. Waswa, how long do you plan on homeschooling your children?
We'd like to homeschool them through high school.
Okay.
So that they just go to college, if they want to go to college, because it's a discussion we are going to have with them. Ultimately, if we discover our children are musical, let them go to Berkeley Music School. If they're good with their hands, let them go to Kenya Polytechnic and work on the engines.
What talents have you discovered so far in your kids?
My youngest has what we call kinesthetic intelligence.
Okay.
In other words, she's a good acrobat. Okay, and so she loves ballet, and she just does all these moves, and it's amazing. And we've been able to discover that in her. My son is very technical. So, and just like any techie, don't talk too much. Just give me my screwdriver and leave me alone. And in no time, DSTV is showing. And you ask him, what did you do? And he tells you, DSTV is showing. Okay? And so we've discovered that's his talent. And my firstborn, she's a writer. I mean, she writes awesome pieces, and she's a very good reader. I mean, at 12, she has already read classical works, Charles Dickens' Great Expectations. Okay, so that one, we are discovering the gifts and talents as they go.
And what about you, Liz? What about your kids have you noticed?
Well, Gloria, our firstborn, is a people person, loves to talk. loves to meet up with people, listen to their issues, solve their problems. So it wasn't surprising then when she said she wants to go into counseling psychology.
Wow.
Yet I'd never
Yeah.
quite framed what area will this take you to.
Right.
But she just totally loves that absorption with being with people, which is very different from me, you know, so that's a great gift that she has. Our daughter is the one who just loves working with her hands, very kinesthetic too, enjoys her ballet, will cook you a perfect meal. So that's what I've seen is her strength.
Right.
Our son is just techie.
Okay.
I've been surprised at how techie he is, but his dad is techie too.
Yeah.
And, you know, we'll open up a computer and tell you this, this, and this needs to be replaced and sort it out and, you know. So that comes so easily and naturally for him. Actually, what's been interesting is that they don't see those as gifts sometimes. You know, and
It's just like, yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
good at this.
Yeah, I'm just
And
good
you're
at
like,
this.
No, I see this. You're the
Yeah,
next
I see
Steve
this.
Jobs.
Yeah, and he's thinking, no, no, I want to play football. I'm saying, yeah, play football. But this is something you also really have.
Wow, you know what I really adore about your way, your method of teaching and learning generally. It's just one, there's continuous learning, and two, a lot of times parents traditionally assume that your children need to go into these careers that they've wrapped their heads around. I know what an engineer does. I know what a doctor does. So you've got, you know, 5 options. Pick one.
That's right.
But if your child was into, you know, food, you could find them being like the top food stylist, for
Exactly.
instance,
Yeah.
in the world, and
right.
and allow them to nourish these talents quite early. Now, what challenges have you faced with homeschooling? What are there moments that you've thought, maybe?
When you're broke,
Okay. Wait a second. Homeschooling is it expensive?
well, you still have your daily
Yes.
needs in the home, right?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
of course, you want to give your kids a few things too, just
Yeah.
like any family would,
Yeah.
right? So you could be raking in an income,
Okay.
but here you are at home with your kids.
Oh, I
right?
see.
And so I know I've
Right.
had those.
It's a trade-off. Yeah.
It's a trade-off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, you have those moments when you're looking at your certificates and thinking,
Yeah.
I wonder how much I could be bringing in.
Yeah.
Rather than, but you know, those have been subliminal, because anytime that happens, I go back to the reason of why did I choose? Why did we choose as a
Okay.
family to
Right.
do this?
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it goes beyond the finances of the home. And really, actually, you do make adjustments to suit your current situation at that time.
Yeah.
But yes, that's a thought that has happened at those kind of moments.
I hear you. And what about you, Waswa?
Yeah. The other challenge that I would mention is the fact that homeschooling has a perception of being an elite option. Okay? Just as you're saying when we started out.
Earlier on, I was saying how I just thought homeschooling is for like really wealthy people who can afford
Yes.
to have all these teachers come privately and
Yes.
educate them.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know much about homeschooling.
Yes, and even for us, we are part of the leadership of the East Africa community of homeschoolers. And when you look at us as a sample, almost every homeschooling family are university graduates, okay? Which means you have gone through the system enough to be able to interrogate the system and say, I'm going to choose this option.
Right.
And so, of course, that comes as a package. For example, someone on minimum wage,
Yeah.
can they be able to homeschool?
Yeah.
Technically, yes, but practically, if the husband, for example, is a watchman earning 10,000, and the wife is a homemaker who goes, or mama fua who earns money for the day, can they really homeschool? Okay, so and we don't want our children to grow up in this bubble, because the reality
Right.
of life is very different, and so it's a challenge. And so I am very deliberate, together with my wife, to expose our children to this other side of life that forms part of our society.
Okay. And I think what I'm getting from you is that even if you do choose to take your child to the traditional school setting, that you then still need to take an active role in teaching them, whether it's what you're doing day to day, how to make something, how to use their hands.
That's right.
I hear you.
Absolutely.
I would echo what Rudyard Kipling said, that of all the things in the world, the most important, save for a good mother, is a good school. And we have what it takes
Right.
to give our children a good school, and it not necessarily the four walls in the classroom.
I love that. What a
That's good.
great way
Yeah.
to end this show. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. I believe that this will help a lot of people understand homeschooling from a different perspective. And it's also demystified a lot. You know, it's not just for the extremely wealthy, and you don't need to be like a physicist to be able to take your child through homeschooling. You can do it just by teaching them the skills that you know on your own, right? Thank you very much, Liz and Waswa. Thank you. I'm now going to share with you our MCM for today, and that is Douglas Mwangi. He is the founder of the very first digital community hub in Mathare slums. That's Oasis Mathare, a non-governmental organization that offers entrepreneurial skills and IT skills to unemployed young people, including teenagers, plus a library too. He was awarded by Queen Elizabeth at Queen's Young Leaders Award at a special ceremony at Buckingham Palace, London, in honor of all the work that he's doing to transform lives in his community. Congratulations to you and to the many others out there who are doing things to transform their communities. Okay, now I'm just gonna have to love you and leave you for now, but be back tomorrow, 8 a.m. sharp, because we're getting into a bee farm, which was incredibly exciting, slightly terrifying, but it's worth the wait. Okay, so make sure you come back tomorrow, 8 a.m. You're going to want to learn and understand the world of beekeeping, because it's going to transform how you think of bees in general, and also business, because you might just make some money from that. Oh, and then of course, remember to follow us on social media. That's Living With Us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Okay, I'm gonna say goodbye, and we'll see you tomorrow.